here on Capitol Hill at the Longworth Building for a gathering of the National Endowment for Democracy, a group that has been involved in spawning regime change around the globe. This is a taxpayer-funded organization, mostly funded by the State Department as well as industry groups, that aims to topple socialist governments by funding opposition groups, opposition media, and civil society. It's what you might call meddling in other countries' affairs.
The National Endowment for Democracy, or NED, presented its 2018 Democracy Award to a collection of Korean activists who aim to topple the communist government of North Korea. The event was timed to coincide with President Donald Trump's peace summit in Singapore with Kim Jong-un. The ceremony appeared to be the opening shot of a massive public relations effort aimed at stifling normalized relations with North Korea. I covered the ceremony because these organizations are doing exactly what Congress accuses Russia-funded media outlets and troll farms of doing in the United States. They interfere in other countries' politics and with foreign money. The only difference is they do it openly and in the name of spreading freedom. Take the Unification Media Group, which was honored at the NED conference. They foment internal opposition to the North Korean government through shortwave radio broadcasts. Also on hand was a collection of defectors. These activists are responsible for much of what the West believes about North Korea and its human rights record. While many defectors tell harrowing tales of escape from political repression, others have been exposed as serial fabricators, lured by hefty sums of cash. In 2017, South Korea quadrupled the payout for testimony from North Korean defectors to a whopping $860,000. The bounty has incentivized colorful accounts of sadistic and unusually creative human rights abuses. According to one defector, a crowd of 10,000 was forced to watch the execution of 11 musicians for the crime of viewing pornography. He said the musicians were blown to pieces with anti-aircraft guns, then run over with tanks. Another defector claimed that female prisoners were raped and then forced to hand their babies over to be used as food for hungry guard dogs. In 2016, news of the defection of 13 North Korean waitresses provided a boost to Pyongyang's opponents. But recently, the waitress's manager admitted to tricking the women into leaving under pressure from the South Korean intelligence services. The scandal is now under UN investigation. A separate UN investigation accusing Kim Jong-un of crimes against humanity was marred by fabricated testimony from defectors like Shin Dong-hook, who confessed to inventing parts of his story.
Shin became the poster boy for human rights abuses in North Korea, retelling his story around the world, leveraging his celebrity to convince world leaders to get tough with the North Korean regime. After years of telling the same story, Shin was admitting not all of it was true. The man who launched a movement had been exposed as a liar.
Testimony to U.S. Congress by another defector, Kwon-hook, who claimed to have witnessed live human experimentation in North Korean prisons, helped drive the passage of the North Korea Human Rights Act in 2004. But Kwon too was unmasked as a fabulist and quickly disappeared from the public eye. Yeonmi Park is perhaps the most famous North Korean defector. She emerged on the international scene at the One World Summit in Ireland in 2014, telling a heart-rending tale of escape through China.
North Korea is an unimaginable country. There is only one channel on TV. There is no internet.
But important pieces of the story Park told at the summit differed from her previous testimony. One of the many inconsistencies in Park's story was documented by journalist Marianne Jolly, who noted that Park initially claimed she had escaped through China with her mother and father.
Where did you cross into? You crossed into China?
Yes, I crossed to China, so I escaped my mom and my father, 3 of us.
But at the One World Summit, Park claimed that she trekked through China with only her mother, who she said was raped by a Chinese broker, adding an entirely new and extremely dramatic piece to her narrative.
Today, I escaped North Korea. I saw my mother raped. The rapist was a Chinese broker. He targeted me. My mother allowed herself to be raped in order to protect me.
All along, Park was profiting from her fame, earning $12,000 and up for speeches, and receiving critical backing from a libertarian political network that included the for-profit Freedom Factory and the Atlas Foundation. She was also made a media fellow by the Oslo Freedom Forum, an operation run by Venezuelan-American oligarch Thor Halvorsen that weaponizes human rights in the service of neoconservative foreign policy objectives. Park played a key role in Halvorsen's Hack Them Back campaign, which aimed to disrupt peace talks between North and South Korea. Mike Bassett, a former reconnaissance soldier at the Korean Demilitarized Zone and an information warfare officer, wrote that her change in narrative warrants serious scrutiny because that narrative changed as a result of a political and economic agenda, rather than a genuine desire to inform the public about the best way to liberate North Koreans from oppression. Despite being exposed for changing her narrative again and again, Park returned to the national stage this June thanks to the New York Times, which featured her in a video aimed at undermining the Trump-Kim summit.
When I saw the president of South Korea hugging Kim Jong-un, I asked myself, would he do the same with Hitler?
The neoconservative New York Times columnist Barry Weiss also cited Park's questionable narrative to attack the peace summit, writing that Park herself had been raped on her way through China. Yet Park never made this claim.
He wanted to rape Yeon-min, and her mother protected her. She said, how could you do this to a 13-year-old girl? And he said, well, they're 11, 12, 13, it's all the same. So to get themselves out of that situation, your mum offered herself. I think it's going to be easier for me than for you.
The Transitional Justice Working Group, an NED grantee, is responsible for delivering some of these testimonies about North Korean human rights abuses to the West. At the NED ceremony, we met the group's director.
And without the NED funding, it was impossible to do this kind of work because we are talking about the future. People concerned about the current situations. And then NED is willing to think about the future and preparations. So once again, I'd like to express our sincere gratitude to bipartisan support and also U.S. Congress people as well, and U.S. citizens eventually. We are doing this work with the U.S. citizens' tax.
As with many of the defectors, information delivered to Western media by South Korean intelligence has often proven unreliable and provoked some embarrassing media updates. In 2016, Western media was flooded with reports that North Korea had executed General Ri Yong-gil. However, General Ri turned up alive days later. In 2013, Western media buzzed with reports that Kim Jong-un had executed his ex-girlfriend, Yeon Song-wol.
A jarring report out of North Korea today claiming dictator Kim Jong-un had an ex-girlfriend executed by a firing squad last week.
Months later, she appeared alive as ever, performing her music on North Korean television. All of this begs the question: is North Korea populated by zombies who rise from the dead? Or is a US-funded influence operation cultivating opposition to engagement with North Korea by relying on often unreliable sources with dubious agendas? During the NED ceremony, Democratic House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi recalled a trip she took to Pyongyang, the North Korean capital.
When we saw the people in Pyongyang, the blank faces, the brainwashing that went on, the poverty of spirit exceeded any poverty that it had seen any place in the world.
She then claimed that locals were executed on the spot for unauthorized corn consumption.
They would get shot if they just took one corn on the cob, one husk of corn.
Pelosi was among a bipartisan cast of lawmakers on hand to pay homage to the NED. Though the NED markets itself as a politically benign entity, advancing democracy and human rights, its record tells a different story. The NED drew its original leadership from a group of Cold War ideologues who had formerly belonged to the Trotskyist Social Democrats USA Party. Founded in 1983 by then-President Ronald Reagan, the NED became an international vehicle for the neoconservative agenda.
It's good to have you all here to help celebrate the launching of a program with a vision and a noble purpose.
Over the years, the NED and its partner organizations have largely served the interests of right-wing, free market parties and corporate interests around the globe.
In Central America. From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening. For 10 years, the U.S. supported the military attempt to overthrow the Sandinista government in Nicaragua. It never succeeded. Today, the Sandinista government has been overthrown at the ballot box.
The NED's first success was the defeat of the Sandinista government in Nicaragua's 1990 elections, replacing it with the right-wing party of Violeta Chamorro. Since then, the NED has advanced U.S. interests in countless countries. It helped swing a Russian election for Boris Yeltsin in 1996. It drove a failed coup attempt in Venezuela in 2002. It orchestrated a successful one in Haiti in 2004, and another one in Ukraine in 2014, which paved the way for neo-Nazis to move into the political mainstream.
Nowadays, instead of having just the CIA going around behind the scenes and trying to manipulate the process secretly by inserting money here and instructions there and so forth, they have now a sidekick, which is this National Endowment for Democracy, NED.
These words from Philip Agee, the late CIA whistleblower, were openly confirmed by Alan Weinstein, a founding member of the NED. Weinstein told the Washington Post in 1991, "A lot of what we do today was done covertly 25 years ago by the CIA."
There's a lot of reasons, I think, for Americans to promote democracy.
NED funding has almost quadrupled since the group was founded. In the past 4 years alone, it's directed at least $4 million into parties and media outfits in Nicaragua. That prompted an NED-funded publication, The Global Americans, to boast of the role the group played in laying the groundwork for change in Nicaragua, where violent protests today threaten to topple the country's elected president, Daniel Ortega. The article went on to say that it's becoming more and more clear that U.S. support has helped play a role in nurturing the current uprisings. Another top target of NED and its Washington partners is China. The U.S. has worked closely with Uyghur Muslims, an ethnic minority group that's faced discrimination at the hands of the Chinese government, and has been used as a bargaining piece by Washington to ratchet up the pressure on Beijing. At the ceremony, I met Omer Kanat, chairman of the World Uyghur Congress, a group funded almost entirely by the NED.
The Chinese authorities, Chinese government put more than 1 million Uyghurs in so-called re-education camp. It is very similar to concentration camps.
And your group, which is sponsored by the NED, is the one that's documented this and supplied the information to the U.S.?
Yes, some of the information, of course, not all of it, yeah.
Along with the U.S.-funded Radio Free Asia, where Kanat used to work, his Uyghur Congress is responsible for widely reported claims that as much as 1/10 of the Uyghur Muslim population of the Jiangxing province of China has been placed in re-education camps. The number of Uyghurs said to be housed in those camps varies widely, from 120,000 to 500,000 to 1 million. And the source of this information invariably boils down to US-backed media outfits like Radio Free Asia.
How do you know it's 1 million, the number? That's a very staggering number.
Yeah, staggering number. This number was given to, by some Western media estimates. We don't know exactly how.
Western media estimates.
Western analysts concede that testimonies from actual camp prisoners is rare. One of the few detailed pieces of testimony arrived through an anonymous source. But the Trump National Defense Doctrine has singled out China, the main counterweight to U.S. global hegemony, as a top U.S. adversary.
We face growing threats from revisionist powers as different as China and Russia are from each other. Nations that do seek to create a world consistent with their authoritarian models.
And the unverified but deeply disturbing claims by Kanat's U.S.-funded organization have played a key role in bringing public opinion in line with Washington's agenda.
China has incarcerated Muslims in re-education camps, with as many as 800,000 individuals in facilities which reportedly aim to rewire the political thinking of detainees, erase their Islamic beliefs, and reshape their very identities, making Uncle Xi less like your fun uncle and more like your creepy uncle who imprisons 800,000 people in his basement.
The NED has also turned up the heat on China by interfering in its neighbors' elections. Back in 1996, the International Republican Institute, an NED partner group, helped propel right-wing libertarian parties to victory in Mongolia, dealing a death blow to the country's socialist tradition and driving record levels of economic inequality.
I am here because we are supporting the democratic evolution and market economy that is developing in this country.
At the NED ceremony, I spoke to an International Republican Institute, or IRI, staffer who presented the group's work in Mongolia as a blueprint for a post-communist North Korean transition.
So we took a group of defector scholars over to Mongolia to study their transition. So Mongolia's transition, if you don't know, it was a peaceful democratic revolution. There was no bloodshed, there was no fighting or any revolution at all. But it developed a successful free market economy without, with peaceful elections, but without any dramatic turnover of power. It's now probably like an island of democracy in Asia, and that's more of the model we want to encourage the North Koreans to pursue.
Like transitioning from a socialist economy to a free market economy is paramount.
Exactly.
The International Republican Institute has been led for years by Senator John McCain, who transformed the group into what the New York Times called a revolving door for lobbyists and out-of-power Republicans that offers big donors a way of helping both the party and the Institute's chairman, referring to McCain.
So we have regular board meetings, I believe. John McCain reviews all the programs that we do. He takes an active interest in the work that we do, but again, it's a collaborative process with all of the staff, starting from local staff on the ground, moving to DC staff here.
Carl Gershman founded the National Endowment for Democracy. He's a neoconservative activist with roots in Trotskyism, and he apparently still embraces the ideology of permanent worldwide revolution.
What we are seeing now is the steady erosion of the North Korean totalitarian system.
But with peace threatening to break out on the Korean peninsula, Gershman was forced to reassure his audience that their work for regime change would not become irrelevant.
There is some concern among the actors that the focus on the nuclear issue today will reduce pressure for human rights in North Korea and maybe even reduce support for the kind of work that is being done by the organizations that we have honored this evening. I want to assure our friends that NED's support is solid.
In the hallway outside the NED event, I asked Pelosi if she and the NED feared the prospect of peace between North and South Korea, and if she considered NED activities to be a form of foreign meddling.
Do you think that the National Endowment for Democracy, if there is a peace treaty, that they should cease funding civil society groups that seek a transition or regime change?
No, I don't know that that's what they do, but I do know that they promote human rights wherever they.
I mean, for example, if Russia were funding civil society groups inside the U.S.
I'm not going into any hypotheticals. I support the work they do.
America remains obsessed with the specter of Russian interference in Moscow's supposed active measures against our political system. At the same time, official Washington celebrates its own taxpayer-funded meddling machine as an engine of democracy promotion. But does the American public know what's being done with its money? And will there ever be a public debate on the consequences of Washington's regime change efforts? If NED leadership has its way, the answer is apparently no.
I have the open society. Having an open society is critical.
And do you think that...
Andy, I'm sorry, I need to grab him. We've got a call. His wife's on the phone.
I'm optimistic.
I don't see his wife on the phone there.
I'm sorry, I need to grab him.
You just lied to me. They just. Do you have 2 minutes?
Are you Sidney Blumenthal's son?
I am.
I know about you.
No, we're going to
take pictures.
Great.
Is that a no?
Yes.
If you liked the video you just watched, and you want to see more original reporting challenging the bipartisan foreign policy consensus, consider supporting us at patreon.com/Grayzone.